Welcome back, my friends, and let's go a little deeper, and see what Jesus has to say about the kingdom and why. But before, we get on the kingdom, I would like to talk to you about a small little detail that is very interesting. Everybody thinks, that okay, when we die, the soul just leaves us, and goes. Goes where? Well, it goes here and there, it goes up, things of this nature. But now, we have to understand this, in the light of what Jesus has said so far, regarding human nature. Here is the body and the soul around it. At death, the aura is, is extinguished. There is no longer an aura. And the soul, orbits the body. Okay, I'll say the brain, just for simplicity. Okay, it orbits the brain. And we think, that once, we die, the soul is going to leave us. Well, according, to the model of Jesus, the soul cannot leave us, at death, the way it looks here. Why? Why? Because, according to the atomic structure of matter and according, to all the, physical laws that, we live by and under, the soul to be able to leave the body, actually, or the brain, the mass of the brain has to diminish first. Same thing, as for example the moon that goes around the earth. It goes under an orbit, in relation to its mass, versus, the earth. But now, it stays in that orbit as long as, the mass of the earth is the same. But now, suppose the mass of the earth, was to be reduced. Well, automatically, the moon, is going to start going around it in an outer orbit. Why? Because the mass, has been reduced. Same thing here. When the body dies, the soul is still with it. Why? Because the mass of the brain, has still being the same. So what happens, as the body decomposes and the brain, start losing mass, then what happens here, the brain starts losing mass, then the soul will end up, orbiting the brain along, wider and wider orbits until the mass of the brain is weak enough that it can no longer actually keep the soul captive. It is at this point, and only at this point, when the mass of the brain is too weak to keep the soul around it, that the soul, is gonna be free, completely free of the body, and the brain will have it loses the grip, okay, on the soul, and the soul now is free to travel, the way it wants to go. But now the idea is that the internal pressure of the soul is under gravitational collapse, so its internal pressure is by far greater than the pressure outside of it, which is only atmospheric pressure. See? So, because of the difference of pressure, the soul, will have a tendency to rise. So, it starts ascending through the atmosphere. Where in the atmosphere it will stop, depends on the initial gravitational pressure. So, it's supposed to keep going up until, the pressure is equal to the outside pressure. But as we know, it's going to be a little different. So, I just wanted to say this. Now, the Hindu practices actually goes through cremation. They put the body, and then they just kind of burn it. Well, of course, when you burn the body, let's say the mass of the body decreases, in a matter of what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Well, that's it. Within 10 minutes, the soul will be at this point where it's going to start its ascent right away. It will not wait, for the decaying process, that occurs, when you bury the body. So actually, you see, cremation speeds up tremendously the release of the soul from the grips of the brain, because the brain is kind of decays very, very rapidly. I just want to say that. Now, I would like to go now to this saying number 27. The kingdom is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. It is within you and it is outside of you. So let's try to understand what he means by this. Actually, the kingdom is spread upon the earth and it is within you and it is outside of you. Now, picture Jesus, speaking to a little crowd. And when he says, it is within you as a crowd. It is within you. And it is outside of you. But so far, what is outside the body that Jesus has been referring to? It is the soul. So, to understand this saying, you see in it that, okay, the kingdom among you is true, and it is made out of your souls. That's exactly what he's trying to say. Now, if we go back, we understand, if we try to explain the souls the way they are, there is two kinds. There is one that is still associated with their bodies, which is everybody that is living, which is the little crowd, he was talking to. But there is others, that the soul has already ascended, like we said, a little while back. He ascended to the atmosphere. So now you have two kinds of souls. You have one that is already floating in the air, and one that is associated with the bodies, and actually the bodies that are living. So, how are you going to take care of all these souls? Well, for Jesus, he came back. He came back to explain. That's why a gathering is very important, to gather everybody into one unit. See? So for him, he starts explaining the kingdom not only as a gathering of people. No, he has the gathering of people, but he puts the kingdom right in the middle. So actually, you see here a kind of like an atomic structure where you have the multitude of souls that reach, that go up after they separate from the body. They go up. They come to the gathering, and they keep, rotating around the gathering like this. And then they are given a chance to go to the middle. And then Jesus, calls the middle a kingdom. See? So the kingdom is not just the gathering where everybody is going to be together. No, it's a state and a place inside the multitude of souls that have reached, where they're supposed to go once they start going up. So actually, when they go up, they will never go up until they lose, their internal pressure. The internal pressure is going to be decreased, but actually they will come to the gathering before they deplete their internal pressure. So actually, see, when you see the soul when it dies, two things happen to it. First, by ascending, the pressure is being reduced, as it goes up until it gets to the gathering. And then the second thing, it lost its shelter. Why? Because when it was associated with the body, then the body used to be its shelter. But now without the body, it's on its own, it has lost its shelter. So when Jesus talks about this model of the kingdom, he is offering the soul a solution to the two dangers that she has, which is the loss of shelter and the reduction in the internal pressure. Okay? So, if, according to Jesus' concept, the soul, when it gets to the gathering, is able to travel to the center, which is to the kingdom, what happens then is that first she will be in a place where she is surrounded by a shelter, and as the kingdom becomes denser with a lot of souls going into it, the pressure inside will start increasing, and that might be, just enough to restore, the initial pressure of the soul. Yeah? So here we are, that's the model of the kingdom as expressed and explained as described by Jesus. Eh? Okay, so for him, the kingdom, he will call it a single one. Whereas the whole atom, which is the gathering, and the kingdom together, well, he calls it a single thing. So, every time you see Jesus, talking, in the verses and the sayings, talking about a single one, he's talking about the kingdom in the middle. When he's talking about a single thing, that means he's talking about the whole system of the kingdom, which is actually the kingdom and its shelter, or as an envelope. So you see, everything in Jesus' concept, follows the atomic structure of matter somehow. See, here we have the gathering, shielding the kingdom and the souls that get in there, and by growing denser, he's going to restore, the internal pressure of the soul. Okay, now let's get into a summary. In the concept of the kingdom, Jesus envisages a system, an atomic whole, where all the souls are gathered around him and are given a chance to move to the center, which is the nucleus, or the core, or the kingdom. And needless to say, this concept is very attractive, mainly because it appears capable of saving the soul from the dangers she would have encountered since her escape from the body. Indeed, as soon as the soul starts moving to the center of the system, two advantages are likely to ensue. First, the envelope of souls that surrounds the nucleus will protect the latter from an exposure to the internal environment that from then on will affect only the envelope, never the nucleus. And then, as the latter becomes dense, his internal pressure will increase, and then might be just enough to restore the initial internal pressure of the individual residents. So this is in summary. Now let's try to understand each part of the system individually. Now I go back. Okay, my gathering will look like a circle. The last do not stay behind, the first are not ahead. I will cause the people to enter the kingdom. I shall draw all men to myself. Many are standing at the door, but the solitaries are the ones who will enter the bridal chamber. So let's go briefly back to the gathering. Okay? My gathering will look like a circle. The first are not ahead, the last do not lag behind. And that's true, because every time you hit the gathering and you start going around it, it don't make any difference if you come first or if you come last, because you're at an equal distance to the kingdom. So really, it doesn't make any difference. And then he says that he will be in the middle, and then he will cause the souls, he will attract all the souls to himself. So whatever he's going to do, he's going to he's going to attract everybody. He's going to exert a force, now yet to be determined. Now we don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to exert a force to allow the souls that are going on the outside to go to the inside. So by exerting the force, he's inviting actually the souls actually in a direction of travel. So actually the soul, when it hits the gathering, it can, of course, it can stay in the gathering, but actually the idea is to take advantage, of Jesus' force, to travel to the center. And then the third one is, what is a bridal chamber? Now this is the first, another new concept with a bridal chamber. Okay? Many are standing at the door. Now listen to this. Many are standing at the door, which is, many are at the gathering. But it's only the solitaries that will reach the bridal chamber. Now, the idea is this. First, let's go and talk about the stability of the nucleus first. To understand the bridal chamber, let's try to see, the atom, with the nucleus here, and the electrons orbiting around the nucleus. Okay. Here in the nucleus, there are protons. Now, protons are, they are positive. Yet they stay in the nucleus without expelling, without, actually. Usually, when you put a positive and a positive, there is, they have a tendency, to move away from each other. But here, all the protons stay close to each other without parting. How can they do that? Now, the idea, is that if you go into the physics, of elementary particles, there is, one theory that says, that to be able to stay together without parting, each one releases a particle and turn into a neutron. So the proton here, it will, let's say it will emit a subatomic particle, and by so doing, it turns into a neutron. And then that neutron is gonna absorb the subatomic particle, and by so doing, it turns into a proton. So one releases the subatomic particle and turns into a neutron, and then the neighboring neutron absorbs, that subatomic particle and turns into a proton. So actually, the protons are never actually close by. Every time, they will turn into a neutron, and then the other one will release the atomic particle, and then turns into a neutron. By the same token, the neutron is going to absorb, the subatomic particle and turn into a proton. So they keep, kind of switching from proton to neutron, so that there are never actually two protons, one next to the other. So that exchange, of that subatomic particle between the protons actually guarantees the stability of the nucleus. Now, the idea is that, say for example, if we, let's say the scientists take a proton and shoot it inside the nucleus, okay, if it doesn't, it is incapable of absorbing a subatomic particle to be, to actually stay inside the nucleus, it will be rejected. It will be ejected, from the nucleus, because it cannot stay. It will be right in front of, right next to a proton, and if he cannot do that exchange, he's going to be expelled. Okay, so to guarantee then the stability of the nucleus, anybody who goes into a nucleus, now if you want to compare it now to the gathering and the kingdom, anybody who wants to get into the kingdom will have to exchange something inside the kingdom so that they can stay. So, if I can go back briefly to the number 6, same thing here. We come here and we are invited by Jesus, to go to the center. So we have two things to do. The soul, gets to the gathering and has to do two things to get to the kingdom. First, it has to travel from the envelope itself to the kingdom proper. And the second, it has to find a way to stay in the kingdom. That means, she's going to have to exchange something with other souls that were there before, so that, they're able, by that exchange, actually stay in the kingdom. If not, they'll go out. And as we go, you're going to understand. So actually the bridal chamber, it's a place where people, actually, what's a bridal chamber, in our lingo, in the lingo of the body, what is it? It's a place, where a man and a woman, stay together, and there is an exchange between them. They're not staying in the bridal chamber, to share a cup of coffee. No, they have an exchange between them, and that's why, they get as close to each other as they can, and it involves an exchange between the two. Same thing, with the kingdom. They call it like this, and he called it a bridal chamber because it is expected for the souls when they get inside to find a way, to exchange something with the other souls inside, so that it's able, to stay in there without being ejected. Okay, so this is for now. If we go in there and we start exchanging something, would we be like, say for example, like we talked about the atom, would we be a different soul or a neutral soul instead of being just a soul? My hunch here, and it's only my hunch, is that exchange is going to be so fast that you will not even think about it. So you can compare it, to the blinking of an eye. When you blink the eyes, you're very seldom, aware of it. Yet it happens, it happens so fast that nobody even bothers, thinking about it. Same thing, in the kingdom. And look at this. That's exactly, what we were talking about. You go into the kingdom, and you cannot actually exchange nothing there. You will be expelled. Look at how Jesus says that. Some went into the kingdom laughing and came out. See, a simple way, to explain this. See, they go in, and instead of exchanging something inside, I ain't going to give him nothing, and people usually say, no, I don't want to give up nothing. But okay, then what's the consequence of this? You will be ejected. Take it as a joke or as whatever, but you will never make it. See, went into the kingdom laughing and came out. And then look at what Jesus said. If you bring forth that within yourselves, that which you have will save you. So, when you get into the kingdom, you have to bring something, you have to bring forth something within yourself. You have to give up something from yourself. And when you do this, you're going to be saved. That means that you're going to stay in the kingdom. You will not come out. Okay? Now, at this point, I have to say something that's very important. It is possible that whatever you have to exchange, with the other souls, it's a physical characteristic of the soul itself. For example, okay, let's exchange a photon. It is possible, but I don't know. I'm only going, by what Jesus says. So, keeping this in mind, it is possible that the exchange has something to do with the physical characteristic of the soul itself. But in number 33, Jesus says, remember my cross and my death, and you will live in the kingdom. So, which means that now, you have to start thinking, go back, to the human nature and see the characteristic of the soul itself. Remember, you see, the word of the soul, it's an image without a model, which means, it is a memory. So, since the soul, actually communicates by means of memories, then it is possible, according to Jesus, that only one memory will be enough to do the exchange, between the souls in the kingdom. Now, the idea is that what memory, would be the most likely. Well, since we, when we get there to the kingdom, we would have followed Jesus' teachings, so it is very likely that the memory, will have something to do with Jesus himself. And that's what it said, here, remember my cross and my death and you will live in the kingdom. So it appears that the only prerequisite to staying in the kingdom, it's share between each other the memory of Jesus and his death. For example, his name was Jesus and he died on the cross. That's it. That's all. It's a memory. His name was Jesus. Everybody knows. All his followers know that. And he died on the cross. It doesn't have to be an elaborate memory, but just a few words, that actually are a memory that is very brief. And that's how we're gonna get stable, in the kingdom without parting. And then Jesus concludes, actually, those who have united in the bridal chamber will no longer be separated. In other words, once that exchange is happening, the souls are going to remain inside the kingdom. They will not part. Okay, and then here, we have to explain, what is the meaning of the unlearned. If I can go briefly to the same graph of the gathering, it will be very nice. I should have, okay. Here it is. Let's try now to understand what's the meaning of unlearned. Okay, all the souls, when they separate, from the body, at which time, when actually the mass of the brain has been reduced, either, in a lengthy manner by burying the body, or by cremating it, which is in a matter of minutes. When the soul, becomes free, it starts on her ascent, it gets to the gathering. So all the souls actually end up, in the gathering. And then those, who have understood the message of Jesus will start, going into the direction of travel and ending up in the kingdom. That, is okay. But what about the souls, that stays, in the gathering and do not take the dive from here to here? Okay? They call them unlearned. Why? They did not learn from Jesus, regarding, the human nature and the way the soul is born and the way, it separates from the body and the way, it hits the gathering, and then what you need to do from that point on to end up in the kingdom. So they call them unlearned. And this is actually it's not very bad, but it's a condition that is not the best. Why? Because you're still outside of the kingdom, and then you're not benefiting from actually the condition of being in the kingdom, which means, the restoration of internal pressure and the finding of a shelter. So if you stay on the outside, there is no shelter for you. The shelter is inside. See? So by staying outside, it's of no benefit. It's something that I consider actually unfortunate. See? So now, when you understand, the working of the model of the kingdom, as it is explained by Jesus here, let's go back, to the number 35. The unlearned will not be too far from us, because we will force them to remain near us. They will keep swimming without getting away from us, because they'll become our shelter. So, according to the graph you've just seen, the unlearned is going to stay outside. It won't be too far from us. We will force them to remain near us. In other words, we will, the people in the kingdom are gonna actually impart on the people outside a kind of gravitational attraction. And when he says, you know, they will keep swimming without getting away from us, Jesus is actually saying that the people at the gathering will keep rotating around the nucleus, which is the kingdom, and then they'll keep going around, because they will become our shelter. See, so here, you know, you have to remember this, you know, when he said you keep swimming, there is orbital motion. So inside the nucleus, there is a kind of like a subatomic exchange in the form of a memory. Okay? The gathering itself is in the form of a circle. And by using the word they will keep swimming, he is actually pointing to an orbital motion of the gathering. In other words, the people at the gathering are not going to stay just here without moving. No, they'll be moving around and guided by the gravitational attraction of the kingdom that is in the middle. Okay. Another consequence of this model, all those who enter the bridal chamber will beget the light. Now, this is very interesting because look at the way to think about this. It has happened before when we talked, you know, about the images from the environment moving from the environment to the brain. They moved, you know, from an excited state to the resting state, which is the brain. So as a consequence of this, a unit of light was emitted at the level of the resting state, which is the brain. Same thing here. All the souls, they started the gathering. And then they move, you know, from the gathering to the kingdom, which is inside. So the kingdom is the resting state. So by moving from the outside, which is from the envelope, which is the gathering, to the inside, which is the kingdom, they move from an excited state to a resting state, so they will emit a unit of light at the level of the kingdom. See? So when it comes in, and you say, all those who enter the bridal chamber will beget the light. Learn from me, and you will find rest for your soul. And that's exactly what we... you know, it should be easy for you to understand this, because the soul, from the beginning of her existence, it was always in motion. For example, it was around the brain, and then with the body, it was going, you know, first, you know, it was rotating, you know, with the earth, and with the earth, you know, it rotated around the sun, so it was always in motion. Then it got to the gathering, and it started going around you know, round and round, you know, with the gathering. It was always in motion. So now, when you move, you know, to the kingdom, you move into a state of rest. It is no longer moving. So that's why it says, you know, learn from me and you will find rest for your souls. And then something that is beautiful too, look at this. On earth, the slaves serve the free men. But in the kingdom, the free will serve the slaves. Now think a little bit. On earth, the slaves, they are the people that actually are at the service of the free men. Men, you know, they're free to come and go, to have wealth, to do whatever they want, but they have a slave right there in front of them, you know, so that they can do things for them. So the slaves actually are serving the free men. But in the kingdom, it's the other way around. The slaves are the ones that are actually, well, not trapped, but they're actually stable in the nucleus. They don't move. They're not free. The free people, they are the ones that are outside, because, you know, they keep moving around and around and around. They're not confined, you know, to a small space. Okay? So in the kingdom, the people that are actually trapped like slaves inside the kingdom, these are the ones who will be served by the ones that are free outside, swimming around and around and orbiting around the kingdom. See? Why? Because they are actually their shelter. See? So that's a very beautiful saying. And that's it. Now, okay. let's go here. Okay? The gathering has the unlearned souls. Okay? And then the unlearned souls are going to keep going, while the souls that have taken advantage of Jesus' teachings, they're going to be inside. Okay, so there will be a transfer actually from the envelope actually of the kingdom to the kingdom that is inside. Now, suppose the souls start going in. Very good. There is, in the subatomic particles and the atomic structure of matter, there is something called an equilibrium. What does it mean? It means that the number of protons in the nucleus have to have the same number of electrons, outside. Say, for example, if you have 4 protons in the nucleus, you must have 4 electrons there, so that there is an equilibrium between the 2 charges. Okay. Now try to adapt this, to the kingdom and the gathering. The souls are going to go in, but how many souls are going to go in, and how many are going to be outside? Something, something is going to happen. Let's say, for example, you have a direction of travel. Everybody is going to go in. Everybody is going to go in. They come at a point where there is no more transfer. Now, just an example. Suppose you have 1 million souls inside, and let's say, for example, you have 5 million outside. Then there is a discrepancy. The whole system, the whole thing, actually, the single thing, will not have reached the state of equilibrium. So, what Jesus is going to do about this? Now, as long as this happens, actually the whole system is not stable, because it does not have an equilibrium in it. So here you have to understand that Jesus will have to at one point, when the transfer has stopped, to help people get into the kingdom, so as to reach the state of equilibrium. But now the idea is, who is he going to choose? Now remember that people with souls have occurred, or actually have existed, before Jesus and after Jesus. Jesus is not the first one, that had a soul. The people with a soul started, from the transition from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. So, from the start of Homo sapienism all the way to today, we have souls, from the beginning of Homo sapienism to Jesus and after Jesus. So, the difficulty here is when it comes time to choose, who Jesus is going to get into the kingdom. It's a big difficulty. It's an interesting difficulty, but it's a big one. Who is he going to choose? The people, which we call the unlearned, because they knew and ignored, or the people that lived before him, who didn't know but were light. Remember this. Why do I say that? Is that if we go back, to the saying number 39, what he says here, I shall choose him, 1 out of 1,000 and 2 out of 10,000, and we shall stand as a single one. See? So the choosing that Jesus is going to do at that particular point, is going to be very harsh and severe. People think, it will be easy, he's going to, well, I did this, I did that, I gave, to charity, or whatever. Well, that's the wishful thinking of everybody, who just wants always to get benefit. But when Jesus is going to choose, his criteria is completely different. See? That's why, it is easier, just before, before we talk about anything else, it is easier to go through the dive in automatically than wait, for Jesus to choose us. Because when it comes to choosing, it will be very difficult to guarantee that he's going to choose me. Okay? So this is just, you know, something extra that I want to tell you about. Okay? So once Jesus has chosen all these people to the point, you know, where there will be equilibrium, then the whole system of the soul, which is actually the single thing of the kingdom, will be impregnable.